Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are recording.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order of regular council, 7 p.m. Monday, April 19th, 2021. The meeting is now open to statements from no more than 5 members of the public of no more than 2 minutes in length each. Do we have any input, Mr. Taylor?
If there's any member of the public that wishes to speak for 2 minutes at this point, please turn on your camera. Mr. Mayor, I think we are good to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We'll move on to item 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any late additions or deletions?
No late additions, Mr. Mayor. However, some information on the item 12.1 was emailed to council earlier this afternoon with submissions pertaining to the liquor license.
Right. And the responses, does every member of council have that email? Have you read it?
I will summarize it at the item as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I need someone to move that the April 19th, 2021 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as amended with the email sent by Mr. Taylor. Who moves? Councillor Weeb, second Councillor Hopful. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Delegations, BC Hydro Bridge, Shalath, Seaton, Lillooet, capital investment update. Sabrina, do we have you there?
Yes, hello.
Hi there.
Can you hear me? Great. So my name is Sabrina Lo-Cicero. I'm with BC Hydro Community Relations. I'm here with Jim Shepard, one of our capital projects manager. And we do have slides as part of our presentation. I'm not sure who cues those up. There we go. Great. Okay, so we'll start, and I'll just give you a verbal cue when it's time to change slides, if that works. Yeah, so this is one of our biannual updates to council on our capital project work in Lillooet and throughout the Bridge region. As you may be aware, we have a large volume of work that's happening, so want to make sure you're kept up to date with the latest information. We will move quickly, so if there are any follow-up questions or projects you'd like more information on, do let us know, and we're happy to follow up. If you can go to the next slide. And as you can see, we will cover a lot, but it is all related for the most part to our capital project work. We'll give you an update on the plan to date, and then we understand there are some related interests to that, such as safety and workforce and accommodation, and we'll share that information with you this evening. So thanks for your time, and with that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thank you. Can I get the next slide, please? Hello. Thank you. I'm not going to go over this in detail, just to point out that we actually have 3 dams in this system: the Joy Dam, the Terzaghi Dam, and the Seaton Dam. And we have 4 powerhouses. There's a powerhouse at La Joy. There are 2 powerhouses over at Bridge 1 and Bridge 2. And there's, of course, the Seaton powerhouse. Essentially what's happening is the water is going from the Downton Reservoir to the La Joy Dam into the Carpenter Reservoir, then goes through 2 tunnels, and then 2 penstocks over the Bridge 1 and Bridge 2, then into Seaton Lake. Water can also go down from the Terzaghi Dam into the lower Bridge River into the Fraser. And then at Seaton, it hits the dam, and it can either go down the Seaton River or into the powerhouse canal, which then goes into the powerhouse to regenerate power, and then it gets to the Fraser River. If I could have the next slide, please. Okay, so the very first thing we'll be going into is the 2 Bridge River powerhouses. These are the 2 largest in our system. So for the Bridge River 1, BC Hydro, is going to be bringing the Bridge River 1 Unit 1 to 4 project over to the BC Utilities Commission this summer. So this is summer 2021. So we've been actually requested by the BC Utilities Commission to actually provide a certificate of public convenience and necessity. That's a CPCN for this project. This is normally not what we would do for this project because it's just an update to the current project or the current work that we're doing here, but this is what they requested, so that's what we're doing. They've also requested that the transmission project, which I'm going to be discussing shortly, be added to this CPCN. So because the CPCN takes about a year for the BCUC to do the review, this means this project is not able to do any substantive work for about a year. And we're not allowed to do any significant construction, can't buy any equipment. So there's a lot of restrictions we have with the CPCN. So the project's not going to be put on hold. We're just going to be doing engineering design and no physical work. And right now, the tentative time frame for this project to be completed is 2030. There are 4 units, so we'll probably be starting that project in 2027, 28, 29, and 30 for doing our constructions. Penstocks, they're actually going to be recoded at the same time as the generators, so the timeline of these 2 projects are exactly the same. As for generating station 2, project to replace has been going really well for 7 and 8. We actually had a failure in one of our transformers, a Unit 7 transformer. This was actually a fairly new transformer, so it's about 16 years old. I mean, this is actually quite young for a piece of equipment that'll actually last for 50+ years. So that's actually going to delay this project a little bit. We've got a spare transformer that we're ready for use, and we're checking to see if we can fix the actual damaged transformer or if it's actually need to be scrapped. Engineering is working out to figure out why the transformer failed. So we really don't know why this has happened so far, but we're looking to make sure that this is not going to happen again. We need about 40 working days after the transformer is replaced before we can get Unit 7 running. So, and then the time to replace that transformer is somewhere between 3 and 6 months to be getting the spare, getting it ready for use, and then putting it in service. We're going to be starting working on the painting of the penstocks this year. What we're really doing is we're doing all the prep work needed to complete the work next summer. And we're also recoding some of the scroll cases, but the major work for that project will be done next year. Can I get the next slide, please? This is LaJoy Dam. This work is, again, we're actually doing some investigative work, and we finished a bunch of field studies in 2020. But again, we're still fairly early in the project. We're still trying to find out exactly what we're going to be doing for the dam, exactly what type of work. You know, we're going to be doing just the dam alone, and we're doing the dam in the intake tower. So the project team is actually looking at that right now. Construction, when we actually have the construction, I can see where the water is right there, but that's actually way too high for us to actually do the work that we need to do, because we're going to have to do the entire face of the dam all the way down to the very, very bottom. So the water level is going to be extremely low. And right now we're looking at having a targeted, at least the process of getting to a leading alternative sometime this spring. Next slide, please. This is the Seton Dam, and sorry, the Seton Powerhouse. This is actually the one that's closest to Lillooet. Right now we're going to be replacing the generator, probably starting about 2026. But to allow that to happen, what we're going to have to do is find a way to move water through the canal. You can actually see the end of the canal, the head pond on the right-hand side of the picture. And so what we're going to be doing on this is we're actually going to be building a bypass. And this bypass is sort of going to be coming up the canal, a few hundred meters from that head pond. It's going to be passing above where that head pond is right now, so sort of on the top side of the picture, and then go down into the Fraser River. And the reason we need to do that is we have to keep water flowing in that canal. It allows us to keep running the units over at Bridge 1 and 2, and so we need a way of passing that water. And when we're rebuilding that unit, there's no way we can pass the water through the unit. Right now, we're into a very early stage. We haven't taken this project to the board of directors. This project is big enough, it's actually going to have to go to the BC Utilities Commission. So, I mean, that's going to be happening probably in the next year or two. There's a dam safety project. It's actually a fairly small one. It's just at the top of Mission Mountain. It's just a surge spill hazard mitigation. And I think I described this earlier as just a couple of bathtubs. And what happens if there's any surge of water that comes in, these bathtubs will sort of gather all the water and put them right back in instead of not allowing it to spill out. Next slide. We're currently working on replacing a transformer and distribution equipment. This is the one that we're talking about at the Bridge River 1 for the transformer replacement. The distribution equipment actually feeds the distribution power into the local area. And we're also going to be replacing a transformer over at the Bridge River Terminal. So you can see the 2021 and the 2023 timelines of those. We've also got a transmission line construction. So this is fixing the transmission line that goes from the Bridge River plant across the Seton Lake. That's the one that sort of goes along, I think it's Santa Claus Mountain where the fire was, over to past Lillooet and then over to Kelly Lake, which is sort of north. And that's actually being included in the CPCN for the bridge G1 to G4. So that means that there's going to be no substantial work on this project will take place until the fall of 2022 at the earliest. And the targeted completion of that project is the fall of 2025. Thank you. Actually, we had a really safe year at Bridge. We had no lost time accidents. We had, we did actually have a lot of work going on with COVID. I'll actually get into the COVID in the next slide, but we've got a lot of good procedures in place. I think the team really worked well just to make sure that, given the extra effort and the extra complexity of working in COVID, that we actually didn't have any lost time accidents. So we had a good year. Next one. Okay, COVID-19 response. So our Bridge River camp, because of the because of the close nature where people are working together so much. So the camp the people actually got the AstraZeneca vaccine deployment. That happened on Wednesday, March the 24th, and about 50 of our workers basically came to Lillooet to receive their vaccines. But given the hold on providing vaccines to those under 55 for the AstraZeneca due to the clotting concerns, this process has been put on hold until further notice. But that being said, our COVID policy is really robust. Many of our workers have received this AstraZeneca vaccine. And even though a lot of them have that vaccine, we still have social distancing rules in place. We have a mask policy, we have stringent cleaning procedures and policies. And we have, in the time that we've been working, so over a year now, and we haven't really stopped the work significantly at Bridge, we haven't had any transmitting between staff members in the facility. So it's actually been, our policies and procedures have been working really well. Next slide. So workforce, we're not going to be seeing those big numbers that we saw a couple of years ago when we had 120, 130 people at Bridge. The most we're going to be seeing until the LaJoy Dam comes, and we still haven't got any numbers from that yet because we still don't know exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to be seeing somewhere between 30 and 50. So sort of for like the next 2 years, we'll be seeing 50 people. And given that the work in 2021 and 2022 is mostly happening in the Bridge River area, almost all the people will be in those areas. We're seeing a much shorter construction season this year. April to July is sort of like our real peak periods. And we'll see a little bit longer one next year between April and September. Next slide. Accommodations. Pretty much self-explanatory. For the projects that we're going to be doing at Bridge 1 and Bridge 2, we're going to be trying to do, given the fact that our numbers are less than the 85 people that we can sort of accommodate in the Bridge Shelath area, we'll be putting people in those facilities. If we have any projects over at Seton, we'll be looking to accommodate workers in Lillooet. Really the big work that's sort of coming up in Lillooet again is that sort of that 2025, 2026, and 2027 timeframe. Next slide. And as you can see, sort of like 50 workers, sort of 2021, 2022, and then about 30 workers over in 2023. And again, that's mostly working on that transformer over the Bridge River Terminal that I mentioned earlier. Next slide. I'll pass it on to Sabrina.
Okay, so transitioning a bit out of the capital project work, there's a couple things we wanted to flag just to for your information before we conclude. One is recreation sites. So given it is that time of year again where we anticipate, well, our sites normally open up for the season and activity increases, just wanted to make you aware that, well, as last summer, we are still in a COVID pandemic environment. So we did introduce some safety measures last year, and currently we're in a bit of a planning stage to look at what opening our sites looks like, just to ensure safety for visitors, and that includes encouraging local visitors to these sites. But those in the area, the rec sites in the area are listed there, and best place for the current information, just given how quickly COVID can change things, is bchydro.com/recreation. So wanted to make sure that was you're aware of that website. Next slide, please. And on the community investment side, just a reminder, we do again this year have post-secondary scholarships available to Lillooet Secondary School students who are interested in STEM or trades training in their post-secondary studies. And applications are being received until May 17th, and we've reached out with the school. So we'll see, hopefully we get some good amount of applicants there. And then our grants program, we are currently reviewing the applications for this year. So we hope to have some news on the outcomes of those applications in the coming weeks. And lastly, communications. So just a reminder, all the communications activities that we do now, they're all virtual, of course, but we are still making sure that there's information out there. And that, I think with that, if we have time for questions, we can open it up.
Thank you both. Before I turn it over to the council, congratulations to you and your crews on your no lost time injury statistic. Work well done, especially in this time of COVID. So any questions, comments from council? Councillor Leach.
Hello all. I just wanted to make mention, because it wasn't actually included in the presentation under your community investment, that BC Hydro has done a silver sponsorship for our pool fundraiser. And so that was a $3,000 sponsorship that is going towards their fundraising effort. So I just wanted to say thank you, because I know we've criticized in the past about BC Hydro giving back to the community, and it's been noted and well appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leach. Anybody else? Councillor Weeb.
Yes, good evening. I'm just curious, I know that you're not positive on the scope of the work on the LaJoy Dam. I believe that's the one that I keep hearing has a crack or something, that the water level, I'm just curious. So is it going to be a repair, or is it going to be an overhaul, or can you just not comment until the water levels are down and you actually know what you're dealing with?
We do know what we're dealing with. It's actually not a crack. It's not a hole. It's actually it's a seismic issue. And I think we've said this before. The way that the dam has been created, it creates a seismic instability of the current dam structure, and that's what we have to repair. So that might mean that we're going to have to do some, change the contour of the dam. We might be putting a big concrete face on the dam. Because right now, I mean, it's a large pile of rocks with a wood crib face on it, and then we put shotcrete over that wood crib face to stop the leaks. That makes any sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. That answers that question. I have another question that's kind of a little plug for Lillooet here. With the bigger project coming up, which would be the LaJoy Dam and whatnot, has BC Hydro ever thought of investing in building something for their employees that come here to work? Because I know it raises our rental rates for local people. Yeah, I'm just curious if it's ever come up in subject, and if you can't answer it, maybe you could find out for the next time. Thank you.
I will pass that on to Sabrina.
We could maybe jointly answer. That's something I can take away. I think for something like that, I mean, we look at those forecasting numbers for staff needs and housing needs related to that work. And that's something that we get more information as we build our plans. We can, like, we're looking now, what we shared today was about 3 years ahead, and even that can change as projects change. And I think as we look ahead and we get more information, I know Zelko, the project manager, and LaJoy is over near Goldbridge area, so a bit of a drive from Lillooet. But I know that's one of the considerations he has to make as he goes through the project planning, looking at the workforce size and the type of work. As Jim says, we don't know specifically what that work will be yet, other than knowing that we have some alternatives to look at for now. But that will come through the planning process. But that's speaking for LaJoy.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Huppel.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate these BC Hydro updates. They're really informative, and they provide good information to let us know what is ongoing. And I'm glad that the grant funding application for 500 is still in place. I have been the previous criticizer of giving back to the community, so I'm super happy that you are giving the $3,000 to SWIMS, and I look forward to future funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from council? Well, James, Sabrina, thank you very much. And I echo what council says. We always appreciate you coming and giving us an update and allowing us the opportunity to ask the questions. And we look forward to a relationship here in this area for the next number of years. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. And we always appreciate being invited and being able to come out and tell you what's going on with BC Hydro.
Great. Super. Okay. We'll move to item 4.2. Mr. Turkington of Bestwick is going to present our 2020 District of Lillooet financial statements. Taylor.
Hello, you guys hear me okay?
Sure can.
Am I able to share my screen, or is someone gonna scroll through with the statements, or do you all have a copy?
If everyone does have a copy, you should be able to share your screen by hitting the box with an arrow on it.
It says only organizers and presenters can share.
Just a moment here. You're a presenter now, you should be able to.
There we go. Okay. So yeah, my name is Taylor Turkington from Bestwick, Hildebrandt, Lund in Prince George. We've been the auditors for the past, I think this is the 4th or 5th year. I just want to say thank you to Joni and management and staff for all their help this year in performing the audit. This was a little more different this year, being COVID times, and we had to do all the work virtually, and that can be a little tedious at times, but I want to say thank you for all their help, and I'll just get started. So this is the statement, the financial statements as at December 31st, 2020. Those are the ones that we have audited. This page here is the management's responsibility for financial reporting. So what this is just a statement discussing the fact that we are the external auditors, and that mayor and council and management are responsible for the financial statements and the implementation of internal controls and ensuring that throughout the year accounting policies are followed. This page is the independent auditor's report. So this is essentially what our engagement is for, is to provide this report. So in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the District of Lillooet as at December 31st, 2020. So what that means is that it was a clean audit report. We didn't find any issues. The controls that have been put in place by the district are being followed, and the appropriate accounting standards, the Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards, are being followed. This section here, responsibilities of management and those charged with governance, just states that it is management and mayor and council who are responsible for the financial statements, similar to the page discussed before. This section here, the auditor's responsibilities for the audit of the financial statements, is what we did and what we are responsible for in regards to the audited financial statements. So we identify and assess any risks of the financial statements. We obtain an understanding of any internal controls and ensure that they are being followed. Also making sure that the district is following the appropriate accounting policies. And we evaluate the overall presentation of the financial statements as they are presented. Scroll down here. So this is the statement of financial position, or the balance sheet. So for the year, total financial assets are 10.4 million, up from the 8.3 in 2019. And that's due mostly to this increase in cash and cash equivalents to 7.7 million, up from 6 million in 2019. And that's due mainly to the deferred revenue increase, which comes from the COVID-19 grant that was received during the year, and this has not been spent as at December 31st, 2020. And the increase in accounts receivable of about $400,000. And again, that's for additional grants received during the year that have yet to be received by the district as at December 31st, 2020. Total financial liabilities for the year are $2.2 million, up from the $1.2 million in 2019. And the majority of that change comes from this increase in deferred revenue. And as mentioned before, that's due to the COVID-19 restart grant that was received during the year and just has not been put into use yet. So the cash is just in the bank account right now. That results in net financial assets of $8.1 million. Non-financial assets include prepaid expenses and tangible capital assets totaling $28.5 million, down from the $29 million in 2019. And that's just due to amortization, mostly due to amortization on the capital assets that are owned by the district. This all results in accumulated surplus of $36.7 million, which is up slightly from the $36.1 million in 2019. Are there any questions on this page?
Okay, council, anything? Oh, thanks very much. Let's continue.
Now we're on to the statement of operations, or the income statement. So this is a description, or shows what the different revenues and expenses were for the year. Total revenues for the year were $6.1 million, up slightly from the $6.12 million in 2019. For the most part, the revenues were similar in 2019 and compared to 2020 compared to 2019. Some significant changes, however, was the increase in grants and government transfers of about almost $400,000. That's just due to additional grants that were received during the year compared to 2019, and the decrease in sale of services revenue down about $300,000, and that's due to COVID and the rec center and campground and things of that nature being closed for the majority of the year. Total expenses for the year are $5,595,000, down slightly from the $5.7 million in 2019. Larger changes in total expenses for the year are in general government, and that's due to a decrease in employee expenses and so wages and such. And then there's also an increase in development services, and that's due to an increase in consultant fees, and there was a new position created. So that results in excess revenue over expenses, or net income, of $557,000, up from the $326,000 in 2019. Again, resulting in a accumulated surplus at the end of the year of $36.7 million, up from the $36.1 million in 2019. Are there any questions on this page? Okay, I'll move on. So this is a statement of change in net financial assets. So this gives a snapshot of the change in net financial assets. So you can see here there were total capital asset purchases of $796,000, down from the $1.3 million in 2019. And there was total amortization expense of $1,372,000, which is similar to the $1.3 million in 2019. So this all results in an increase in net financial assets of $1.1 million, up from the $287,000 in 2019, resulting in net financial assets, as mentioned before, of $8.1 million. Any questions on this page? Okay. This is the statement of cash flows. So this gives you an idea of where cash came from and where cash was spent during the year. So total cash flows from operating activities are $2.5 million, up from the 1.7 in 2019. And that's due to an increase in the annual surplus for the year, and an increase in deferred revenue due to that COVID-19 grant that was received. During the year, there was repayments of long-term debt of $61,000. One of the long-term debts was fully paid down during the period. And as mentioned before, there was $796,000 spent on capital asset purchases during the year. All that together results in a $1.6 million increase in cash for the year, resulting in cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year of $7.7 million. Are there any questions on this page? Okay, I will move on here. So now we're in the notes to the financial statements. So what these are is additional information to give a better insight into what makes up the numbers that we just went through. I'll go through these and sort of touch on the ones that are significant or I think would be of interest to Mayor and Council. So note 1 is list all the significant accounting policies that the District of Lillooet follows. So this states that they follow the public sector accounting standards, and the fact that they use the accrual basis of accounting. Note D here, cash and cash equivalents, provides a description of what the financial statements, what cash and cash equivalents on the financial statements consist of. So it consists of all cash and short-term investments maturing in 3 months or less, as well as what's in the bank. Note H, tangible capital assets. This just gives a description of what the tangible capital assets that the district holds are and what their useful life is. The useful life determines the amortization amount that is charged against the asset each year. Deferred revenue. This just states what is required for a funds received to be considered deferred revenue. In the case of the COVID-19 grant that we've spoken about already, the funds received are all deferred until the funds are used for expenses relating to COVID-19 restart. So once those expenses are incurred, then the revenue will start to become recognized in the financial statements. So cash and cash equivalents is made up of $7.7 million in the bank and then $840 in just petty cash. Investments, these are held with the Municipal Finance Authority of BC, or MFA. They're held in 2 different funds, the Government Focused Ultra Short Bond and the MFA Money Market Fund, for a total of $1.6 million at the end of 2020. Note 4, receivables, gives a breakdown of what the different types of accounts receivable are at the end of the year. The significant changes is trade accounts receivable, and that is just monies due to the district from people that the district has performed services for. We expect these receivables to be collected upon. Note 6, accounts payable and accrued liabilities. All the amounts in here are similar to 2019, with an increase in trade accounts receivable, and that's just expenses that the district is to pay in 2020, which should not be a problem. Deferred revenue. So this gives a breakdown of the different types of deferred revenue that are in the district at the end of the year. So it's made up of prepaid property taxes, prepaid utilities, other prepaids, and other deferred revenue. Other deferred revenue is where the COVID-19 grant of $800,000 plus is currently sitting. Employee future benefits. This is just a note describing where the balances in the employee future benefits are currently sitting for the accrued sick benefit and vacation payable. Note 11 is long-term debt. So this is a breakdown of the outstanding debt with MFA held by the District of Lillooet. So as you can see, there's $44,000 in long-term debt outstanding, and the sewer treatment plant loan was paid off by the end of 2020. Note 12 is tangible capital assets. This just gives a breakdown of the total balance as well as any additions or disposals in the different types of capital assets held by the district, as well as the amortization amounts that are incurred during the year. Accumulated surplus, so this is the reserves and other surpluses held by the district. So there's an unappropriated surplus of $1.4 million, appropriated surplus reserves of $807,000, and other reserve funds of $6 million at the end of the year. So these are funds held, these are reserves held for future purchases or expenditures. Note 14, segment reporting. So this is just a section that describes the different departments or funds that are used by the District of Lillooet. So that's general government is mostly legislative and administrative revenues and expenses for the district. Developmental has to do with economic and community development and municipal planning. Public works is the annual maintenance and of roads and facilities and equipment owned by the district or maintained by the district. Protective services is includes the fire department and any other sort of emergency services. Park trails and campground is, as it says, any revenues and expenses from any parks, soccer fields, baseball fields, and the Cayush Creek campground. Environmental health services has to do with the cemetery and the Lillooet weather station revenue and expenses. Recreation, education, and cultural has to do with revenues and expenses from the rec center, weight room, gymnasium, and all those types of things, as well as any swimming lessons and exercise programs. The airport is revenues and expenses to deal with the Lillooet Municipal Airport. And then water utility services are revenues and expenses to deal with the potable water in the district. And sewer services are removal and treatment of the district's wastewater in Lillooet. Note 15 just gives more information on those segmented funds or departments. So it just gives a breakdown of where the different types of revenues and the different types of expenses, how they're allocated throughout the departments. Note 16 is taxation. So this gives a breakdown of what the taxation, where the taxation came from, and the amounts that it was for the year, and as well as collections for other taxing authorities. So that'd be province of BC, school or police taxes, and the regional districts in the area that Lillooet collects taxes for. Excuse me. Utility connection fees and user rates. This gives us a breakdown of where these revenues come from. The majority comes from just user fees in the district. Sale of services. This gives a breakdown of where the revenues for rentals or user fees and things of that nature come from during the year. And these total amounts agree to the amounts that are on the face of the financial statements. $19 grants and government transfers. This just shows where the grants came from during the year. As you can see, either from federal, provincial, or other grants from outside of the government. Investment income just shows where the investment revenue came from. So for this year, there was $72,000 in bank interest and $43,000 in actuarial from MFA realized. Note 23 shows how the annual budgeted surplus in the financial statements, which is this $2.1 million, agrees to the 2020 financial plan that was approved by council on April 20th, 2020, which had a surplus of $169,000. Note 25, it gives a description of the trust funds held by the district for the cemetery and the Lillooet Community Foundation to help maintain and keep running the cemetery and the community foundation. The note 26, MFA debt reserve cash deposits and demand notes. These stem from the long-term debt held by long-term debt Lillooet has with MFA. They're just amounts that are kept until the loans are paid off, which is why the sewer this year is 0 for both, because the long-term debt for the sewer project has been paid off in 2020. This municipal pension plan note, this comes from the province, the government. It just gives the Lillooet just has to input the amounts that they paid for employer contributions to the municipal pension plan during the period, and how much the employees contributed as well. Note 28 contingencies just notes that Lillooet has been named as a defendant in some legal actions, but there's no way to determine the possible loss or even if it's going to go through at this time. So no, and we don't know if there'll be a settlement. So there's been no amounts charged or included in the financial statements. Note 29 just gives a description of the different contracts that the district has entered into or is entered into at the end of the year. And then Schedule A is a requirement from the government. Just has to, until the total COVID-19 Safe Restart grant is fully spent, there'll have to be a note or a schedule just explaining what the balance is and what the amount has and how much of the grant has been spent during the year. That's about all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Taylor. Any questions from council? Doesn't appear so. Did a heck of a good job, Taylor. Much appreciated.
You're too kind.
I see our federal government's a little bit chintzy on their grant allocations, but we'll work on that politically.
Okay.
Okay, again, on behalf of council and the District of Lillooet, thank you for your good works, and it's nice to see together with our staff under Ms. LaRue and our CAO that we have a really good financial report to offer to the community. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 6.1. Need someone to move that the April 6, 2021 regular council meeting minutes be adopted as presented. Who moves? Councillor Wiebe, second Councillor Howe. Any errors or omissions noted? No. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thanks. Carried. We'll move to item 9, correspondence and petitions. Any member of council want a piece of correspondence removed for discussion on 9.1? No, thank you. Then I need someone to move that the correspondence included in the staff report dated April 12th, 2021 be received for information. Who moves? Councillor Howe, second Councillor Leach. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll move to item 11. 11.1 sidewalk patio pilot project. Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to share my screen here. Mr. Mayor, you've got that on your screen?
I do, yep.
Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Abundance Bakery has submitted a formal request to council to utilize the sidewalk fronting their commercial lot as an extension of their outdoor seating area, which has become a necessity for the food service industry in the last year. The immediate push at this time for outdoor seating comes from the provincial orders disallowing indoor restaurant seating, which is extended today for an additional 5 weeks. Staff generally only support these requests as a launching pad for new bylaw or policy development, rather than accepting requests one at a time. However, while council is not permitted to assist a business in their operations, the current provincial guidelines would seem to support creative solutions, and the current state of restrictive orders in the province lends itself to some regulatory flexibility. The applicant is proposing to use the Mile Zero Plaza to set up their seating. This is a unique location in the downtown core area, as it provides significantly more width than the rest of the downtown sidewalks. This means that the patio or sidewalk extension does not need to be constructed into a travel lane, which would require Ministry of Transportation approval and not be the best practice on a highway used by logging trucks. There is an odd and confusing merge lane on approach to the extended portion of the sidewalk, which may present a small safety concern. Staff are requesting that the owners provide some form of heavy barrier as added protection against vehicle strike. The solution staff have proposed are heavy flower planters to be maintained by the business owner and removed upon vacating the sidewalk at the end of the season. Staff will be receptive to alternative solutions if the owner of the business can provide something that would achieve the same goal. Further, the owner will be required to provide for insurance over the occupied area, including listing the District of Lillooet as additionally insured up to $2 million on the policy. The applicant has also submitted a letter of support from the other commercial property fronting the plaza, being Linda's on Main. The Abundance Artisan Bakery does hold a liquor license. However, that license will not extend onto the proposed patio sidewalk patio. Staff are recommending that council approve the use of the sidewalk, at which point staff will work with the applicant on the logistics. Staff are also proposing that the Director of Corporate Development Services be delegated the authority to grant additional patios if in 2021 only, if safety criteria can be met and the establishment of additional licenses of occupation will not cause congestion on the sidewalk. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any questions, queries from council? I see none. I have a quiet council this evening. Thank you, council. I agree. I'm pleased that staff brings us forward with this request. I think in this age of, especially with the public health order being instituted for another 5 weeks and the like, and I really believe that our staff and council are interested in assisting where we can to have our businesses function as efficiently or expeditiously or as a revenue generated as possible. I think this is a good one from that perspective. I'm going to read this in its entirety, and then I'm looking for someone to move it. So staff recommends that staff be directed to work with Abundance Artisan Bakery to grant a license of occupation to permit use of the sidewalk adjacent to the business as an outdoor seating area as a pilot project, and that staff bring a report to a future council meeting with recommendations for an ongoing sidewalk patio program if the pilot project is deemed successful. and that the Director of Corporate and Development Services be authorized to grant the Abundance Artisan Bakery a license of occupation with a license fee of $100 until December 31st, 2021. And further, that the Director of Corporate and Development Services be authorized to grant additional licenses of occupation under this pilot project exclusively in the 2021 calendar year, with license fees of $100 each for other food service establishments that wish to use a municipal sidewalk for an outdoor patio where they can do so without disrupting the flow of pedestrian traffic, impeding traffic and pedestrian visibility, or creating safety concerns at the sole discretion of the director. Who will so move? Councillor Howe, second Councillor Wiebe. Any further discussion, Council? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thanks, carried. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Very good work. We'll move to item 11.2, downtown commercial parking policy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My slide is back up on your screen, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Yes, I have it. Thanks.
So this is a staff requested direction based on issues that have arisen in predominantly the building permit process when an existing commercial structure is undergoing permitting for a change of use. A change of use is when the occupancy classification of a building is changed, triggering building code requirements of that use, as well as parking requirements of the zoning bylaw. Changing parking requirements for an existing building can be impossible without removing portions of the existing structure, which would be financially unviable for many businesses trying to occupy an existing space. The intent of this request is to provide clear, documented interpretation of when the parking requirements of the zone are strictly enforced, and in what cases the existing development on a site is prohibitive. The commercial parking requirements break down the parking based on use. As we can see with a number of these uses, a change from restaurant to pub, which may not have significant building code implications, changes the parking requirements based on the number of seats. For a 40-seat restaurant, the parking requirement is 14 spaces, whereas the same space as a pub would require 20. Similarly, a retail store requires 1 space per 28 square meters of gross floor area, and a liquor store requires 1 space per 43 square meters. A 300 square meter retail space would need to supply 4 more parking spots than the same space used by a liquor store. This isn't an uncommon way of chunking up parking, and Lillooet is not off the mark with this, but it does create challenges and additional processes to go through when many future changes of use will require development variance permits just to be issued a building permit. Staff would like to propose the following criteria for when to require full parking requirements. When a vacant lot is developed, full parking requirements apply. When an addition is proposed for a structure creating any new gross floor area, full parking requirements apply. And any residential use will need to meet the requirements of the bylaw. When staff are requesting to not enforce the parking requirements or when there is a change of use with no floor area being added and no available land on site that could be reasonably converted to additional parking, or when there is a change of use with no additional floor area being added, but enough land for some additional parking, but not enough to meet the bylaw, staff would require that the additional land be converted to parking within the bylaw requirements, but not require a DVP for the remainder. If council passes this recommendation, the staff recommendation, the development services staff will follow the interpretations as described on the previous slides. If council doesn't pass or doesn't move the recommendation, then staff will continue to require full parking requirements for a change of use application, including DVPs when necessary. I would like to remind council that the cost of a DVP was recently lowered from $1,000 to $500 per application. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any questions, queries from council? Yes, Councillor Leach, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, since this was a staff recommendation, what the overall feel from, because it will mostly affect our commercial downtown, what the overall feel from commercial users has been up to this point. Is it? Yeah, like I know the parking's been an issue in the past, so I'm just want a little bit more information as to why this is going forth.
Absolutely. So we have had some applications and some proposals fall through on existing buildings, mostly on the west side of Main Street that backs onto Russell Lane, where everything is already fully developed and there is no more physical location to put additional parking. So these business owners who purchase these properties come in with their building permit. We do our zone check and let them know that they require 8 parking spots in a loading zone, and their lot is already fully built out with a structure on it, has 3 spots in a loading zone, and no physical space to put any additional parking. So this puts staff in an awkward position of having to require a variance permit, which is a discretionary authority of council, to go and ask them to vary the bylaw that is impossible for these business owners to meet. So it's the reason it's coming as a request is because it is a moral question that council will need to give direction to staff on. The resolution is tying it to the existing zoning bylaw, and will expire when this bylaw is either rescinded or the commercial parking requirements are reviewed and changed. I'm going to be considering in the downtown core a parking requirement based on gross floor area, not based on use, so that we won't run into this in the future.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Leach. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Councillor Wiebe?
Okay, through the mayor, after that comment, Mr. Taylor, so somewhere down the road when this is rescinded and something new comes up, are we going to work with the people that have changed the use and are dealing with this now, or are they grandfathered into something, or are they going to be expected to pay for parking spots, or do we even know?
No, we don't know yet because we haven't gone through that process, but I can take a stab at what I'm going to suggest, is that by basing the parking on the gross floor area, the lot itself will determine sorry, I'm looking you down here, you're up here. The lot itself will determine the maximum size of the building with the maximum amount of parking that's required. And then if it's based off of gross floor area, any change of use, as long as there's no additions proposed, won't increase the required parking amount. We'll also be looking at putting in some language speaking to changes of use where the current parking may also not meet the gross floor area requirement. But if any of those buildings are demolished and rebuilt, then they would have to meet the new gross floor area calculations, and none of those buildings that, just like this resolution is proposing, none of those buildings that currently can't meet would be permitted in addition to further increase the gross floor area.
Okay, thank you. Any other queries from council? So I take it it's a good measure, Mr. Taylor, to enhance and streamline and become more efficient. And when we already know an area that has its challenges, taking it so that there isn't an unnecessary number of applications coming to council for variance. Is that correct, the way I'm reading it?
That is correct. The point is to not subject the business owners to a $500 application fee and another 4 weeks of their lives when they are completely incapable of meeting the requirements of the bylaw.
Perfect, well done. Any other comments, questions from council? Very good. All right. I will read this carefully and I want somebody to move it. Staff recommends that until zoning bylaw 218, number 454 is rescinded or the commercial parking requirements in the zoning bylaw are amended, staff are directed to not require additional parking in the C1 zone for a change of commercial use application where there is no construction that increases the floor area of an existing structure that is located on a property containing a commercial use with no available land to designate for parking. And that where a lot in the C1 zone can support additional parking and there is a change of use application where there is no construction that increases the floor area of an existing structure that is located on a property containing a commercial use, staff will obtain as much on-site parking as possible where the lot can support additional parking, even where the full parking requirements of Part 6 of zoning bylaw number 454 cannot be met. And further, that staff be directed to review commercial parking requirements for commercial use parking as part of the 2021 zoning bylaw review project. Who will so move? Councillor Howe, second Councillor Hoppel. Any further questions or comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Good work, Mr. Taylor. Good work, council. Okay, we'll move to item 11.3, our 2020 financial statements. Ms. LaRue.
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor, if you'll just give me a minute, I'll pull up the financial statements so we can go through them. No, I'm just kidding. Taylor already did a good enough job on that.
I was good. Are you serious?
No, Taylor did a good enough job on that. This is just for council to formally accept the 2020 financial statements so they can be signed by the mayor and myself and included as part of a number of upcoming reports that you'll be happy to know are coming forward to you soon.
Thank you. I assume you mean also the annual report from the mayor and the CAO as well, right?
That would be wonderful, yes.
Any questions from council, queries or comments? Well done. All right. I want somebody to move that the District of Lillooet's 2020 financial statements be accepted as presented. Who will move? Councillor Hoppel, second Councillor Leach. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Ms. LaRue. Good work as usual. All right. We will move to item 11.4, request to allocate surplus back to SWIMS. Will you handle that, Ms. LaRue?
Definitely, through the mayor. And just a point of clarification, and thank you to Mr. Gare for giving me a call today. In the report, it does say that SWIMS gave the district this money for extending the pool season. That didn't happen. Actually, the extension did happen. However, because of a lack of lifeguards that year, there was 4 at the beginning of the year. By the end of the year, there was only 2. There was actually no significant increase in wages that year, so the money was not needed to be used for that. So the district is still holding those funds. They have since earned a small bit of interest over the years, so it's just over $8,400 right now. SWIMS has requested that we return those funds to them so they can use that as part of their fundraising efforts for the extended pool season upcoming. And we are recommending that council approve the reallocation of those funds back to SWIMS. The district would hold the funds until such time as they have achieved their fundraising efforts. Otherwise, it's just going to go to them and then come back to us. So But we are recommending that certified resolution of council so that SWIMS is aware that those funds are available to them for their efforts.
Any comments from council? No, hearing none. Councillor Leach, you want to carry this?
Yes, sure. So I'd like to move that the district allocates $8,403.60 from the appropriated surplus to the Society for Wellness, Instruction and Mobility through Swimming, or SWIMS, for their fundraising efforts for the 10-month pool opening.
Who seconds? Councillor Hoffel seconds. Any further comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Great. Well done, folks. We'll move to item 12.1. Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch referral for an application for an endorsement of a licensed lounge, patio and picnic area for the proposed brewery located at 104 Main Street, Lillooet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The District of Lillooet has received a referral from the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch for the endorsement of a lounge, patio, and picnic area located at 104 Main Street in the industrial area. The site in question, known as the Feed Store, is in process of being converted into a brewery. While the applicant has already received provincial approval for the manufacturing of alcoholic product, they are required to seek endorsement from the local government when product will be sold for consumption on site. The proposal includes a tasting lounge and an outdoor patio, as well as a 1,000 square meter picnic area to the north. The lounge and patio area has a maximum combined occupancy of 75 persons, and provincial regulations will determine how the areas must be delineated. The picnic area will have an occupancy of 58 persons during standard operating time. However, this area may see higher occupancy during those times when the owners seek licenses for special events. The area is capable of sustaining this. The province requires that residents' views on the liquor license be solicited. The district required the following forms of notification to be undertaken by the applicant. A notice sign was posted on the property along Main Street, detailing the application and requesting submissions of support or opposition. Staff confirmed that the sign was erected and maintained on site. The sign was posted at the beginning of the month, with provincial requirements for notification being a minimum of 10 days before council consideration. The applicant also submitted the same advertisement in the April 7th edition of the Bridge River Lillooet News. With regards to impact, the business license bylaw was amended last June to take into account the operational hours of outdoor patio areas, which staff would read as applying to outdoor picnic areas as well. The requirements are that the operation of outdoor service areas not extend past 10 p.m., regardless of the operational hours of the establishment, and that the areas not be occupied again before 9 a.m. in the morning. Council also added some exemptions around holidays and local events, such as Canada Day, the Apricot Festival, and the next time Canada thrashes the US in Olympic hockey. From the notification, Council received 25 responses, all of which appeared to be from Lillooet residents, and all of which were in support of the application without reservation. The 16 responses received prior to the publishing of the agenda are available in the agenda package starting on page 115, and the 9 additional submissions were provided to Council this afternoon after the response period closed at 4:30. Staff have updated the recommendation with the additions highlighted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any questions, comments from council? I see none. And I guess I will read this. Staff recommends that the Council of the District of Lillooet has considered the following: the location of the establishment, the person's capacity and hours of liquor service, and that council comments on the prescribed criteria as follows. Noise is not expected to be an issue because of the seasonal nature of the outdoor portion of the establishment. The district's nuisance bylaw 2006 number 273, which prohibits music or speech to be audible outside the property after 10 p.m. And the business license bylaw number 2006 number 272, amended by bylaw 2020-022, limits the hours of operation of an outdoor patio reed picnic area to 10 p.m. regardless of liquor license permitted hours. If the application is approved, the impact is expected to be positive in that it will support the growth in tourism, employment, and offer a new social venue for residents. The property is adjacent to properties zoned industrial and above residential R2 zone properties. This proximity to the residential is characteristic of all of Lillooet's commercial and industrial zones, and there being little buffer between these uses. The benefit of this is that many properties are within walking distance of the proposed license, further limiting the strain of parking availability and impaired driving. And that council's comments on the views of the residents are as follows. A total of 25 responses were received from residents, with 25 in support for the application citing in favor and 0 in opposition of the application. The views of the residents were solicited by a notice of development sign posted on the property from March 30, 2020 until the date of council consideration, and a newspaper advertisement which ran on April 7, 2021. Further notification was posted on the district website and Facebook page. And further, that council endorses the approval of the lounge and picnic area proposed at 104 Main Street, Lillooet, BC for the following reasons. Council recommends the issuance of the license. Council believes the majority of residents in the area support the issuance of the license, providing the closing hours of the outdoor portion of the license is no later than 10 p.m. or later as permitted by business license bylaw 2006 number 272. The establishment will create a welcoming, social, and vibrant atmosphere, enhance tourism and employment within the community. Who will move? Councillor Howe, second Councillor Leach. Any further discussion? I think as our corporate, as Mr. Taylor says, the reason for all the detail is to assure that the licensing or the application for licensing is well received with as expeditiously as possible. Am I reading into that?
That is correct. The LCRB does require quite a few boxes to be ticked when they're reviewing the council resolutions. So the more information we put in there, the less they have to come back and ask us for clarification, and that speeds up the process for the applicant.
That's great. That's much appreciated. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Good work, staff. Good work, council. Now, we go to item 12.2, tax rate bylaw. Ms. LaRue.
Thank you. Yes, through the mayor this time I will actually share with you guys. I hope. There we go. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to do this a different way because it didn't come up with any of my information.
There it is.
Sorry, yes, I just I closed it and reopening it didn't have any of my notes on there.
It was weaving the straw into gold.
Perhaps, maybe. Isn't that, I think that's Rapunzel, isn't it? So tax rate and municipal tax collection bylaw for consideration by council tonight includes the 1.1% increase in property tax revenues that was adopted by council as part of the 5-year financial plan. I've outlined here the municipal tax rates historically for the last 5 years. You can also see those as part of the tax rate bylaw for 2021. Tax rates are expressed as dollars per thousand. So for example, if a residential property assessed at $200,000 in 2021 using these tax rates would pay $3.8461 per thousand of assessed value, or $769. A business class property, on the other hand, would pay $15.5013 per thousand, or $3,100 in property taxes, which is about 4 times as much as a residential class property. As part of the financial plan bylaw, again, council approved a 1.1% increase in tax revenue. I've calculated the property tax bylaw so that each class of property within the district of Lillooet would see the same 1.1% increase in municipal property tax charges. This is not to say, of course, that each property in each class would see an increase of 1.1% to their taxes. It depends, of course, on their assessed value and how the change in their assessed value this year compares with other properties of the same class. So some properties will see an increase of more than 1.1%. There may be one that's right on average that would see exactly 1.1%. Some would be less. Some may actually see a decrease in their property taxes over last year. Of course, this is not the only option. Council can choose to allocate the total property tax revenue differently amongst the classes, but the same dollar value must be collected, as that's the amount that's part of the adopted financial plan. So it's important for council to remember that if you request that a certain class of property see less of an impact in their municipal property taxes, the other classes have to make up for that. Using the 1.1% increase in property taxes across all the classes, the impact to an average single family residence would be approximately $22 for the year. Coincidentally, the class 6, which is business and other, would actually see the same $22 increase in their municipal property tax. Again, this is based on the average assessed value, so some properties would see a higher increase, some properties would see a smaller increase. This shows the municipal tax revenue that we've collected each year, broken down by class. You can see that residential contributes the largest portion to our municipal tax revenue. This is followed by class 6, or the business other class, and then the utilities or class 2 properties. If you remember, maybe in your orientation, class 2 or the utilities properties, their tax rate is limited by regulation based off of the tax rate that is set for business class properties. So reducing a tax rate for business class properties directly reduces the tax rate for utility class properties as well. This is showing the change in average assessed value by class over the 5-year historical. Both light industrial and the residential class properties have seen significant increases in their average assessed values over the past 5 years, while the business class properties have been fairly consistently seeing small increases in their average assessed values. Not nearly as significant as the residential class. And finally, there's a lot of lines here, but what I wanted to show you is the average municipal tax levy by class and how it stacks up if you compare it to that annual provincial inflation rate. So just for this purpose, we'll pretend that time started in 2017 and that everything was perfect that year. Every property, regardless of what class, was paying the perfect amount and proportion of their property taxes for the district. Moving forward over the next 4 years into 2021, the bright yellow line that you see that extends a little further across shows the inflation. And the lines for each class show whether the average annual municipal property taxes for that class was more or less than inflation. So again, I extended the yellow line out a little bit further. Again, that's the inflation line to show that the residential, the light industrial, and the recreation nonprofit class properties have seen their average municipal tax increase by more than if you would compare it to inflation. Whereas all of the other classes, the utilities class, the major industry, business, farm, they've seen their property taxes increase by less. So I'm not trying to say that property taxes should be based on inflation, although it certainly could be, but just to show that, again, the residential, the light industrial, and the recreation or nonprofit classes are taking more of the burden of municipal tax when you compare it to the other classes. And that's all I have for you. I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, the tax rate bylaw that you see before you is not set in stone. Staff are recommending that council approve this tax rate bylaw, but council is free to direct staff to reallocate the total municipal property tax revenue that that we need to collect amongst the different classes.
Thank you, Ms. LaRue. Any questions, comments, queries from council? Councillor Hoffel.
Through the mayor, on screen, I think it was 4 of 8 that you had there. Oh, thank you. Why aren't you quick? So you said the increase to the taxpayer on average would be about $40 at the 1.1%?
Through the mayor, actually $22 for
Oh,
both.
$22?
Yes, both the single family residential and for the business class 6.
So, and the business class 6 would be $22 too?
Correct. It's just, honestly, it's just a coincidence that it ends up being the same dollar value.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it? Like it's not usually like that, is it? I thought the business class paid more of a percentage compared to ours, even though it's 1.1%. I thought their percentage was higher.
And yes, through the mayor, as I said a little before this, the business class is about 4 times higher than the residential class when we're talking tax rates. The reason that the increase and decrease is more and less than the 1.1% is because we actually had a few folios added to the business class this year. So there's more properties that can take up that 1.1% increase, and it reduces the impact on the properties that were already established.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions from council members? No, I see none. Thank you, Ms. LaRue. So, staff recommends that the tax rates and municipal tax collection bylaw number 2021-17 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time. Who will move? Councillor Leach and Councillor Howe second. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Staff recommends that the tax rates and municipal tax collection bylaw number 2021-017 be adopted. Who would move? Councillor Howe, second Councillor Weave. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Carried, and thank you. Thank you, Ms. LaRue. Item 13, notice of motion, 13.1. Councillor Howe.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So rather than reading the notice of motion, if council wouldn't mind, that I just give some background information as to why this notice of motion, why I wanted to bring it to the table. So after New Westminster had sent this out and it crossed our desks, and we saw that they had asked us to help with some advocacy in regards to workers' rights, I wanted to know more about what that really entailed. And so I reached out to Nadine Nakagawa, and she was one of the council members for New Westminster who spearheaded this. So after some conversation with her, she actually invited me to a panel where I was able to hear the speakers in regards to these workers, the 50,000 workers in the hotel industry that were feeling the effects of the decision making of many larger hotel chains. So on Thursday, April 1st, I participated in the Unequal Women's BC Path to Recovery Forum. And they addressed the 50,000 mainly female workers in BC that have been fired unjustly in the hotel industry during COVID. It's a complete disregard, as I've started learning, for proper governance in HR practices designed to protect others and ensure proper treatment of the workers. And they're doing this by leveraging unprecedented times. And the impact it is having, this leveraging is having not only on 50,000, and I want to keep saying that because we keep hearing about, numbers in the billions. We're going to be receiving billions in this recovery and that recovery, which is fantastic. But I think that we get caught up in those large numbers. We forget what 50,000 people looks like. And not only just 50,000 people, but 50,000 women. And I think that's also really important for us to recognize. So not only does it have a negative impact on these women, but also on our economy as a whole. So the panel was facilitated by Local 40, which is a not-for-profit organization. And on the panel sat Nadine Nakagawa, Iglika Ivanova. She's a senior economist and public interest researcher, as well as 3 of the 50,000 women. And they spoke to their experiences with the hotels that had essentially fired them without due cause. So currently, there are recall rights, which are good for about 6 months. Beyond that, the rights get a little bit fuzzy. So after being laid off, you have about 6 months for recall, and then it becomes a bit shaky. So beyond that, let's see, many large hotels are leveraging this gray area. And what they're doing right now is they're firing workers without severance or termination pay, as I said, under unprecedented times, and they're replacing these workers with lower wage workers. So they do this despite the billions of dollars in wage subsidies, low interest loans, and grants that are paid to them to help them to aid them through COVID, which also includes aiding them in preserving their existing workforce. So this leaves, as I say, 50,000 mainly women on social assistance, when they really want to work. So it was interesting to find that they're doing this because we cannot recover the economy by lowering wages, leaving people to rely on public assistance, and not tying expectations on how those billions of dollars in subsidies are going to be passed to these large corporations. So there's no rule book, so to speak. It's just basically like a blank check. And so now we're seeing the effects of that. And the request from the City of New Westminster is one of participation and advocacy. Our vote, I know we're a municipality and we focus on municipalities and our District of Lillooet political arena. However, we do hold some political power outside of that. And I'm asking the council use it today in the opportunity to speak for the 50,000 mothers, aunties, and grandmas, friends who aren't being heard. If anybody in the public or council wishes to learn more about this afterwards, there's actually a list of hotels that are participating in this gross mistreatment. And they can take a look at who those hotels are and also learn a lot more about this subject at bcunequalwomen.org. So let me just go back here. So in the notice of motion, we have two and that's. That staff draft a letter on behalf of council to the Ministers of Labour and Tourism expressing council support for the right for laid off workers to return to their jobs when the pandemic eases, and that staff write on behalf of council to the Local Government Management Association and to the Union of BC Municipalities, encouraging them to host future conferences and events in venues that respect workers' rights and pay at least a living wage.
Okay. You want to hear anything more, Councillor Howe? Or we want input from other councillors? Thank you. Councillor Hoppel.
Through the mayor, Councillor Howe, the reason they're not hiring these 50,000 people back, is it strictly money, or is there other reasons? Do they have government funding from hiring other people, or is it just wages?
Thank you. Through the mayor, to my understanding, they're not hiring these workers back because they don't have to. Pre-COVID, there would have been a system, a protocol in place through their human resources departments, ensuring that due cause for firing and dismissal is adhered to. My understanding is that right now, with the existing COVID recall, I'd call it protocol, it's not necessary. They have a 6-month recall rights option, and beyond that, because things have continued on with the pandemic, I don't think, it doesn't sound like it's been addressed or prolonged and continued. We're now entering into a grayer area where those types of protocols and expectations haven't been solidified.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm obviously, from my perspective, as I say, I'm reluctant as heck to get into the gender issue part of it. I look at it as a straight business, but when you stand back and look at the whole thing, I mean, this is a very laudable request or consideration, let's put it that way. But there's a number of things in the way the wording is that makes me a little bit uneasy. And that when it says, for the right of laid off workers to return to the jobs when the pandemic eases. Yeah, what does that pandemic eases mean? Listen, what's going to happen, folks? We don't have a clue. And businesses are going to have to reinvent themselves. Hotel, restaurants, all the kind, even in our own town. And we're so fortunate that we were able to achieve, maintain the level of business that we did, but still there are people hurting. What I concern about a bit, Councillor Howe, is that, bringing workers back to their jobs when business returns. Well, that's the problem. We don't know when the business returns and who makes that decision. The other one is, after the first wave, if you recall, the businesses were kind of trying to gear up again, and the workers didn't want to come back because they were quite happy with the monies that they were getting from the federal government, provincial government. Okay, be that as it may. I just feel we don't know how the business is going to end up reinvented, especially places like downtown Vancouver and the rest. The whole face of business is going to change. For us to ask, or let's say from my perspective as one vote, to ask someone to say, you must hire somebody back when you don't know what the future is going to come, that's a little bit, how would you say, a little bit overreaching. And are there not other ways in which people are cared for, especially if the business that they're in is going to change dramatically? Then government allows for unemployment insurance, retraining, so on and so forth. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. If our wording says return to the jobs when the pandemic eases, we don't know what it's going to look like. So I'm a little bit reluctant on that part. Any other comments from council? Councillor Wiebe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like in certain parts here, it says 50,000 hotel workers. In other parts, it totally emphasizes women. I'm not sure that I want to get into that fight on this particular layoff of workers. I would have to see, like, are they, yeah, maybe the hotel isn't going to open again and we're going to force them to do this, or they're going to have to, like the mayor said, reestablish themselves in a different way of dealing with things. And I'm thinking it would probably be more in an urban center, because I haven't actually seen it here in our little community, which shouldn't make any difference. And I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate you bringing it to the table, but I'm just not sure that I can support it either.
Councillor Hoppel.
Through the mayor, I just have one more question. That last paragraph says host future conferences and events and venues that respect workers' rights and pay at least a living wage. Do you know, Councillor, how the difference between what they were getting paid when they got laid off and what the pay at least a living wage is? Did they mention that?
Yes, thank you, through the mayor. In hearing from the three ladies and when visiting the site, and hearing from the economist, it sounds like what is happening is a lot of these workers, the majority of these workers, were receiving benefits and the like. A lot of them were nearing retirement. And what's happening now is it's not even an issue of there's no work. There's work. The existing employees just aren't being hired back. It's new staff. And so I think that's where the attention needs to be focused, is that, we have yes, we have these fantastic, I don't know if I want to call them fantastic, but these opportunities for subsidy through COVID and retraining. Well, yes, but when you're nearing retirement, I mean, retraining isn't exactly something you want to have to be going through. You will if you have to, but if you're being laid off because there's, you know, cheaper work options and an industry can take advantage of, you know, what the climate of what COVID's creating economically, then I don't think that that's just.
Right, but did they say what their expectation of a living wage is? I'm just wondering, like, I'm questioning our support on telling hotels that not only do they have to hire these people back, but they have to give them a raise or whatever. Like, I'm just not sure that that's, well, I just don't think that that's our place, but I wanted to know, I wanted some verification on the wages that they were getting when they were laid off and the living wage that they were going for. Is there a difference? Monetary difference?
I can't speak to that outside of knowing that, you know, these workers speaking to the benefits that they were receiving, what they had been taking on in terms of being able to afford, you know, their own rent, food, helping their kids with the college tuition as single parents. When you think about livable wage, I mean, minimum wage just doesn't cut it. It doesn't afford for someone really to live well or to contribute to the economy by having a little additional cash. It's a struggle. Mm-hmm. So I think, yeah, they did not say what these new hirees were coming back, what that payment structure looked like.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Yeah, just before Councillor Leach, I'll let you go. I think we got to keep in mind the hospitality industry and the tourism. I mean, we're looking at 40% of the businesses going out. And I mean, those are small business owners that their life savings are in it and they're decimated. As I said, I'm just a little bit concerned. I know, are we taking on a big multinational conglomerate? No, the majority of our hurting people are the small businesses that have to reinvent themselves. Go ahead, Councillor Leach, sorry.
Hey, okay, so I know, Councillor, how your passion is women's rights and supporting those who really need help. I hear you, I get that. And I think the rest of council hears you on that. I honestly would like to see your passion that you have for this and see you put it towards something that you can move forward with. I think us passing a letter and it just going into a letter and going into sitting someone's desk is not really where you truly want to take this or any other women's rights matter. And I don't know what that is exactly, but it's just what I'm hearing with these notices of motions that you're bringing forward. There's an underlying current and something that you put absolutely every heart and soul and piece of energy that you have into, I would fully support. But I just, because this is just picked out of a stack of letters that we get every week, and just because it's got a little inkling of the women's rights issue in it that you're so passionate about, I have a hard time because I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm not making sense. I want to support this and I want to support you and your passion. I just don't think this is it. But I think that you've got something that is clearly hitting a nerve. And I would like you to bring something forward that is more well-rounded to council, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Councillor Leach. I think all of council, keep something in mind. We just had our federal government roll out the budget. And I mean, there's a number of initiatives there, a vastly number, and the Liberals are noted for spending a lot of money. And I mean, the laudable one, if you listen to today's budget presentation, I mean, they're hell bent for creating daycare costs at $10 a day. And I think that's a magnificent one that is going to help us. How quickly they can get there, one only knows. And certainly we can create whatever political pressure our little community goes. And the same thing goes with the our provincial budget. There are billions of dollars that are being paid. I just fail to see that everyone is going to drop through the cracks. I mean, everybody's got their heart out to all the folks that the pandemic is hitting. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Any other further comments from council? So Councillor Howe, if you want to move this, I would suggest you feel free to read it, but you can also say you want to move it as it is written. I'm sure us and the rest of council will accept that.
Okay, I'll move it as written.
Who will second? No, I'm sorry, Councillor Howe. I think this one has failed. Okay, we'll move on to item 13.2. Lillooet Board and BMX Association proposed graffiti art installation. Councillor Wiebe.
Yes. Do I just read the motion or do I have to read the letter?
You have to explain it to us so that we're convinced.
Oh, okay. We would like to install a couple of plywood graffiti boards on the fence down at the skate park. We will monitor it for any kind of discretionary things that probably shouldn't be there. We have got some very interested youth in painting and doing different things, and they've been really cognizant in keeping the park tidy and just monitoring their fellow skaters and different things like that. And after a little bit of research, I've found that usually if you put some faith in them to take care of what they're passionate about, they will. We would like to do this on a trial basis. If there's any kind of extracurricular activities outside of the park, then we would immediately take it down and whatnot. But we really would like to try it. I think it gives them a little bit of freedom of expression. And like I say, I don't know if it's been tried in other communities. I believe it has. And just from the inline skate park people, I get positive feedback on it. So I would really like to put the motion forward.
Okay.
I'm open for questions.
Any questions or comments from council? I assume you did speak to staff about this?
I did speak to staff about it, and they seem quite positive with it from the few that I did talk to. And I've talked to different people in the community. Yeah, and the various communities around us, and they think it's a decent idea. I don't think it's going to create more graffiti anywhere in the community. And like I say, we do have a couple of people lined up that would monitor it if there was any kind of hate things on there or rude paraphernalia, whichever, and get rid of it right away. So it's not like we're just going to give them free rein and go. And there's also going to be discussions and maybe a few art classes and different things, but there is going to be discussions with, there's rules. If you're not responsible, you lose it. So it's kind of a pilot project, but we'd really like to try it.
Maybe a whiteboard with washable ink and an eraser. I won't tell you what we did years and years ago in the mining industry in order to achieve that, but it worked well. You have to allow people the freedom to express themselves, even if they do nasty pictures about their managers and supervisors. It's healthy. Any
I
other?
think some of the, I really like some of the graffiti art. I think it's quite unique.
I've got a picture of what they did one of me, so, and it's quite funny. I've kept it for years and years. Any other comments from council? Okay, Councillor Wiebe.
Okay. I'd like to make the motion that the letter from the Lillooet Board of BMX Association dated April 14th, 2021 be received for information, and that staff conduct research and bring forward a recommendation to council regarding the proposed graffiti art installation in Lillooet.
Who will second? Councillor Leach. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Right. It'll be a topic of conversation and a place often visited, I'm sure. Item 14.1, Mayor's Report. On April 7th, I was on a call with Minister Osborne and the mayors and CAOs. This is a monthly call, and also the regional district chairs that Minister Osborne has with us. She's managed to, does a very good job with it, and it was started prior to the last election when COVID began. And it's a monthly call, and all of us mayors are allowed to contribute in terms of our greatest concern or our best success. Not unfortunately, but unfortunately, obviously, the focus is mainly on COVID and now vaccinations. So it kind of detracts where in the beginning, it was discussions on finance for various specific or special interests for grants and so on and so forth. So I'm looking forward to that size. In the last, on the 6th, Minister Osborne did have an update on vaccinations and the public health order. So Dr. Martin Lavoie was there, and the CAO and myself attended. And as the reports come out, we'll post them on the district website. On April 9th, we had a Shaw visit us and an update, and by golly, things are getting busier and becoming warmer in terms of their ability to get fiber optic into our community. So I'll leave that for our CAO to give a bit more detailed update, but I was rather pleasantly surprised because in previous meetings that we had with them last year, I thought it was quite a distance off, but not necessarily so. I'll let Jeremy give us the update. Also, we have a weekly roundtable with Interior Health, mayors of Interior Health, get updated in terms of the vaccines and vaccinations. And they obviously provide information. And I know the CAO has, yesterday we got a Dr. Bonnie Henry's PowerPoint update, and he'll post it on the website. A lot of statistics, and as you probably heard today at 2 o'clock, we're looking at another 5 weeks of circuit breaker. They didn't necessarily pull the plug, but they certainly took another breaker out, and we're due to keep local and to our own groups until the end of May, long weekend. Minister Farnsworth will be on Friday outlining the what he feels he'll have, or what the province feels they'll have in terms of monitoring the various rules that are being broken on the public health order. They still haven't mandated specifically. However, they have stated out of province should stay out of province, and people should stick to their own local areas and specifically their own health authority areas. And it doesn't mean, when questions came up, if you were listening to the presentation this afternoon at 2 o'clock, you know, although that Whistler is inside the Lower Mainland, it doesn't mean that people from Vancouver should be heading up to Whistler. Same thing goes for us. If we want to leave our area, it should be for a specific reason. And they feel that reasons for job, for school, and obviously various appointments are there. Otherwise, they really want us to stick to our local areas. They're posting signs at the Alberta border, and you've probably heard that Ontario has got their police on both the Manitoba border and the Quebec border, and getting serious about stopping traffic. And that's a behemoth of attack, of an approach, I feel. So Alberta residents are asked, please don't come. And the other thing is, I just got it from the Premier's various sentences, discussions. I have a feeling that Public Safety Farnsworth and the police will be looking at people that are carrying RVs or trailers behind them, and I'm sure they're going to be stopped and asked where you're going. So they're a bit more specific. If you heard it, I'm just telling you what you know, but if you weren't there at 2 o'clock, they're getting a lot more serious about it, and Farnsworth will outline what he intends to do for people that don't adhere to it. So we're down for another 5 weeks, and be kind to each other. We've got COVID fatigue. I'm just the same as everyone else. And we will get through this. I'm really pleased with Lillooet in terms of how we've managed through this time, and the vaccinations are coming on. And let's see where this takes us over the next 5 weeks. That's it for me. Councillor Huffel. Oh, no, wait, before I leave, Councillor Huffel, I haven't finished yet. I'd like to make a notice of motion that staff brings forward a resolution to the May 3rd, 2021 regular meeting to direct staff to start the process to amend the council procedure bylaw and to only take out the prescriptive start time of 7 p.m. Maybe if council is in agreement, we can look at changing our times. And basically what it's for is to keep ourselves from being fatigued, but more so efficient. And more importantly is that staff runs very long days. I'd really like, and we're really pushing, we're getting a lot of good work done. And I really feel that we've got to be cognizant of the efficiency of the work that our staff is. I've really come to realize, and I'll keep saying it, I didn't have an idea exactly how much work is involved to prepare for these meetings, then to have these meetings, and then after the meeting. So I would like to make that notice of motion and bring it to council for discussion at the next meeting. Thank you. Councillor Huffel. She left us.
Councillor Hoffel appears to have dropped out. We're trying to get her back, but we can move on to the next councillor, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howe?
Nothing to report today.
Okay. Councillor Hoffel, you got it?
I believe so. I don't know what happened there. So my turn? Yes?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. April 6th, I attended the open and closed council meeting. April 7th, the historical meeting with Michelle Willard of Mighty Museum. We just kind of talked and gathered information and ideas to redesign the museum for opening not this year, but next year. April 8th, I attended the Mayor's Vaccine Roundtable, and I really enjoy those. I like attending. You get the up-to-date information on different communities in an ever-changing scenario. So you get the up-to-date information, and 2 days later, it's behind the times. So it is very good, though. April 15th, another historical meeting. We're working on a grant proposal. I'm actually working on the second grant proposal I've ever done in 2 weeks. Nothing like, doing them all at once. I'm learning lots, and hopefully we can get this submitted and acquire some funding for the museum. Other than that, that is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoppel. I will Councillor Leach now, please.
All right. So more just some update this week. So SWIMS has continued to fundraise, and in 9 weeks, their total so far is $120,000. So that's pretty good. They're pretty excited, and so all of that is with fundraising, pool passes, and business sponsorships, which is phenomenal considering what this town is going through with the pandemic. May 8th is the date the beautification committee has picked to do the first round of planting in our downtown planters. So they are, of course, always still looking for volunteers. They won't be having a big work bee because we can't. But there's a number of different areas and flower beds and planters that need weeded throughout the year and planted. And so if you're interested in picking one of those up, I think it is Betty Weaver who is coordinating that right now. Pitch-in week starts this week, and I was able to get my pitch-in bag today. They actually came in, and so Ms. Weston gave me a couple. They're available at the rec center, just a reminder. And I actually would like to challenge Mayor and Council to each grab a pitch-in bag from the rec center and fill it. And I will reward you. I will offer Mayor and Council a Purdy's chocolate bar from the SWIMS fundraiser that I will purchase out of my own pocket if you can fill the bag of garbage and send it to our staff to post on our social media page. So, and you have until Saturday to do it. So let's see if this will work. And then my final bit is, as much of the community knows, my mother's house was broken into on April 9th. And I wanted to first of all thank our local RCMP detachment because they did really well in the response and the arrest of the gentleman who did it, and charges were filed. However, I'm really, and we've had this discussion at this table a few times. We have the SILGA resolution going forward at the AGM on the 28th for harsher punishment, but this gentleman got off on a $200 bail that same day that it happened. So I really want to encourage council to attend the AGM and vote for a resolution. It's a far cry. I mean, it's not the first time communities have asked for this, but something that we can continue to do and push for. Also, something that the public can actually do is continue to report suspicious activity. We hear at this table that there's a lot of these crimes going on, and we've also heard on the flip side of that from our local RCMP detachment that they don't hear it. And I'm guilty of that. I've had my vehicle broken into twice and I have not reported it. I have also seen a fight break out on our back alleys as I was driving by and not reported it. So I would really encourage the public to do so. The more information, even if it's not worthy of a file number or a case number, it gives them some information that maybe later on they can use in a case. And And I did have a really, really amazing phone call with Corporal Banfield this afternoon. And I notified her that I was going to take this a little bit more public. And she would like me to stress that suspicious activity, for an example, is not calling the police to say your neighbor's door is open. They would expect the public to go to the neighbor and say, hey, are you home? Or communicate with the neighborhood. But also for those activities that you might hear or see that you don't necessarily want to become fully entangled or involved in, they are more than willing to listen to somebody coming in and making an anonymous report. So you can do that one of two ways. You can do that through Crime Stoppers. They do get Crime Stoppers reports. However, sometimes they do have questions that they may want to follow up with you. And you can do so by using the non-emergency line at the detachment. And all you have to do is ask to speak with an officer on duty. So I really would like to stress that to the public, as well as I want to continue, and I would like Mayor and Council to continue to advocate for more members in our area. I learned today that the number of members in our area, because I really thought it was about budget, because most things are about budget, right? It's actually based on file volume and the types of crimes. So the more reporting we have of crimes, although it seems scary to the public, the better they can review to see if they actually do need more membership here. So that's where I wanted to go. I know, and so there's one more thing too, is that because I know I did do a public Facebook post about what happened, and it's very hard in so many characters to put everything that I'm saying into it. Plus, of course, there's personal emotion into it. But I also want to stress to the public to not go after these people and take care of it yourself. It's not okay. It jeopardizes cases, and you risk of basically, for lack of better words, you're stooping to their level. So please let the RCMP handle it. Call them as soon as you can and let them do their jobs. So, and that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leach. Yes, very disturbing, distressing, but I know that the RCMP are looking at staffing up at a greater level. They're looking at buying and building houses, so they're able to attract their force, and they should be up to, how you say, complement soon, because all they're getting right now are the new entries. And the new people with less than 2 years experience can't drive alone, and goes on and on and on. And also, Mr. Deniger and I have been told that the RCMP will have a community liaison type person who will be able to liaise directly, not only with us, the council, but with individual community members. And as Councillor Leach says, create a dialogue so that information is coming. But I am deeply disturbed when people enter houses, especially when people are alone. That's taking it too far in my book. That's just not on, and we have to deal with it. Yes, Councillor Huffel, go ahead.
Just to add to that, I think that people don't want to call into the RCMP. They don't want to report it because they think that nothing is going to happen to these people, that there is no consequences. And that may be so, but I do think the RCMP are doing their job. When we were broken into, he was caught and put into jail for 4 hours. That's as long as they could hold him. They were here. They, assessed everything. They did their job. The RCMP in our community are doing their job. It is our court system that is not upholding and making those consequences count. They are the ones, and that is what we have to change with that resolution. So I agree, please call in because they are doing their job. They need some more people that can call in. The more cases we have to show that there is a need for more RCMP here as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wiebe.
Yes. I'm just not sure if I should address Councillor Leach's proposal there for the chocolate bar. Might be a conflict of interest for me, seeing as I'm with the garbage man here at the moment. Smile,
Nope.
Mayor Bossy, smile.
No cheating.
I'm not going to cheat, I promise. On April 6th, I attended the regular council meeting and the closed council meeting. And on April 7th, I attended the final SILGA speaker series. And unfortunately, Councillor Howe could not get on. She was having a problem with her Outlook. And miraculously, a couple of days later, I had a problem with mine. But it was a really good, it was the president of TRU, Brett Fairbairn, and he was talking about how rural places need to change to be successful. So you need to keep your strengths and let go of your weaknesses. And I never actually thought of Kamloops as being rural, but when TRU is, when students are applying to TRU and whatnot, and they're overseas in Europe or Japan or wherever, Asia, they have such congestion in their places. They get here and they get to Kamloops and think they're in the country. So it's just different perspectives. To me, we're rural, they're not, but I guess all of us are rural. He did have a discussion about natural disaster responses and recovery and how we need to focus more on the region than just the one town that we live in, because it kind of takes into consideration everybody, and you need to decide if you want a quick recovery or an equitable one. And I never thought of putting it that way. So this whole speaker series has been really informative. I've really enjoyed it. On April 7th, I also attended the presentation by Mighty Museums on a Zoom with the Historical Society. And I took away from that she made a really good point when she said that museums shouldn't be about things, but should be about people and the history. That we had to move away from colonialism. And I thought that was a really great suggestion for us. And yes, she did give a list of grants that I've looked through for the Miyazaki House as well. So, and then on April 8th, I met with Kim North and Melody Thacker from the Miyazaki House at the rec center in regards to different grants and things that we could apply for. But I think we're going to sit back and do a really thorough strategic plan rather than spending our time applying for grants after grants after grants with no real plan of where we're going. What else? April 13th, I attended the regular SILGA meeting. That was also interesting. 3 of the mayors had attended the Kofi convention. And so they had little blurbs from the forest industry and how the rules are changing, and the major tender holders with licenses are going to have to log it or share it or lose it. And Premier Horgan also said that within the next couple of weeks, there's going to be something coming down the pipes where the communities hopefully will get a kickback when the logging trucks they're logging in one area, but taking the wood to a different community. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what's happening there. Forestry industry is changing, where they've got engineered wood is going to start replacing concrete and steel when it comes to building. They can go as high as 12 stories with the engineered wood. I thought that was interesting. And one of the companies is going to bring out the first Tesla electric logging truck. I can hardly wait to see how that works. And I'm thinking it's going to be on the island and not in our roads. So I think that would be a little tricky out here. And I wanted to remind everybody that the voting starts Monday, April 26th and finishes at 11 a.m. on April 28th for Silga. So if you're not registered, get registered, because hopefully either I or Councillor Howe or both of us will be on that board for next year. So make sure you register and make sure you vote for the two from Lillooet and a few of the others, because there has to be 7. On April 14th, I attended a Gold Country meeting. It was a closed session in regards to legal, and that was my couple of weeks, and I really like the mayor's resolution. I don't do well late at night either.
Thank you, Councillor Wiebe. I think just a quick one from my perspective. I see correspondence that says, you know, from Lillooet's area, yeah, mining is dead, but logging, no, I don't think so. The price of lumber is about the highest it's ever been in a heck of a long time. So while I agree with you, eventually the wood, when the price comes down, can replace concrete. But if you really price it today, I think a concrete house is going to be cheaper than a wood house. And I think it's worth us knowing in this area, which really surprised me and pleased me to a point, is that a load of logs being trucked out of the Gold Bridge area coming down to the plant here, I think is worth about $1,200 to the logger, depending on the size, obviously. When that lumber hits Home Depot and the rest of it, that same load is worth $35,000. And I think that's something we got to look at. So the lumber industry right now is doing well. The prices are high, and I believe we have a future here. And I think, you know, as you say, for Kofi, we've got to pay a bit of attention to it and obviously support it where we can. Okay, thank you. We'll go to item 16.1, CAO report.
Thank you. Good evening. At the last council meeting, our mayor commented on my skillful avoidance of giving CAO reports, so I hope you're ready for this meeting to go until 10 p.m. So all departments have been rather busy, very busy since my last report, but I'll just give you a few highlights. I won't actually hold you till 10. So Development Services is looking forward to starting phase 3 of the official community plan engagement process, starting with a draft OCP for council and the public to review. There will be community pop-ups and stakeholder workshops in May, and a follow-up survey for the public in May and June. Public Works has posted a temporary full-time laborer position. The posting, which is listed on our website under employment opportunities, closes on May 3rd. I ask council and anyone watching this to please spread the word. We need a laborer. Staff did meet from Public Works. Staff met with organizers of an upcoming ALS drag race rally at the airport. Staff would like to see this event go ahead, but must consider fire safety, COVID safety, and adequate volunteer numbers to make sure it goes ahead safely. The Recreation Department is hosting the community vaccination clinic this week at the rec center. Hopefully those who are interested have signed up. The rec center will also be holding a court proceeding the week of May 17th to 21st, which may have an impact on some spaces available for other activities, but the judiciary was very hopeful that they would be able to hold this proceeding in Lillooet. The refrigeration project is underway. Crews were on site last week and removed all the old refrigeration equipment, including all the components that contained ammonia. And installation of the new equipment begins in May. The district is also making operational changes for the Recreation Department staff to do more maintenance at Conway Park by creating a stronger bond between Recreation and Public Works. And my final note for the evening, our previous operator of Cayush Creek Municipal Campground ended their contract with the district a couple of months ago. And after very productive discussions over the last 2 months, I'm happy to share that the Campground Operating and Maintenance Partnership Agreement for 2021-2022 has been finalized and is now with Coyote Creek Band Chief and Council for their signatures. We are all excited about this. From the perspective of the Lillooet residents and visitors to the campground, the operations will generally appear the same as in the past, except that the district will be working very closely with Coyote Creek Band to help the campground become a first-class facility and a launching point for other tourism-related activities in the Lillooet area. I personally believe that this is a very important step of many in building a strong ongoing relationship between the district and Coyote Creek Band that will benefit both communities. For those interested in camping, if they want to get away from their home office in the pandemic, the plan is to open up the campground for the May long weekend in compliance with the COVID safety protocols of the time, which we're not sure of yet, but we're following the province closely. And that is my report for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dennegar. Any questions? Well, if you're planning to open up on May long weekend, aren't we going to be constructing inside that campground?
There will be works occurring throughout the campground in the future, but at this point, it's sort of a spin up for the new operator to get comfortable with the campground and other works that need to occur there. There's some spring cleanup and maintenance and so forth that does have to occur.
Great, well done. Any other questions, comments from council? No, hearing none. We'll go to item 18.1. The meeting is now open to questions from the media and public. Mr. Taylor?
Thank you. If there are any members of the public in attendance who would like to ask a question of council at this point, please turn on your camera. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. I'll now ask someone to move that the April 19th, 2021 regular council meeting be adjourned. Who will so move? Councillor Howe, second Councillor Wiebe. Call the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, council. Thank you, staff. And thank you for public for participating tonight. Have a good evening and a great day tomorrow.